Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Very excited to have this episode with you. We're just coming off of Pride Month, right? That was a really fun, full, gay month that we had. The Rainbow Room that I host, the queer people that join me every week for my mentorship group, we had a retreat here in Nashville for the tail end of Pride Month, and that was awesome. But going into this next string of episodes, I want to do a series on queer people and the church. So today I want to introduce you to a special friend of mine. This person has had a funny, a fascinating orbit of my life over years. So this is Mica Neuda. Before I say anything else, Mica, you want to say hi?
Hello.
So I met Mica, 12 years ago?
Yeah, 2014. But I didn't really care about you.
That's 9 years.
Okay.
Anyway, did you say you didn't care about me?
Yeah, I didn't really care about you. Well, you were afar. You were
I was just somebody in the environment.
Yeah, you were there.
Okay. But I mean, Mica had moved into a student housing arrangement that I was overseeing. So that was kind of our proximity to each other. But when she was at school at BSSM, so at Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, she ended up taking a class of mine.
Multiple classes.
She took a few of my classes and just enjoyed
Humans 101, I've been wanting to get him to teach on it still. It's so good. I don't know if it would still be valuable or viable, but it's so good. I still root for that.
Thanks. Yeah, so she took a few of my classes and just liked the content. And then
I loved it. Changed my life. She liked the content. It changed my life. There were some things that changed my life.
Nice. I love that. Thanks. So then she graduated from second year and then went back to Southern California for years and just kind of dipped out of my life, out of my radar.
Yeah.
And by the way, back then, I was convinced that Mica was gay.
Which is upsetting for me because I wish someone would have told me. Because in my story, which we'll probably get into, I never thought I was gay. But I was so suppressed that I severed that part of myself. So when I did have contact with my queerness again, all these memories started popping up. So anyways, every time he tells me, he's like, oh, I always knew you were gay. It makes me so upset.
We had another woman who was a good friend of mine, and she was the female overseer of that community. And I told her, hey, just be aware, Mica Neuda's probably gay. She's gay, right? So just be aware of that.
2014.
Yeah, I was in the dynamics, just be mindful, that's a thing that's going on. I wasn't concerned. It wasn't something I was worried about. I just was letting her know, just be mindful that'll probably affect the dynamic
Which
a little bit.
I had no idea.
I can't believe.
Up until we'll get more into my story, but up until 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't believe. Yeah, that blows my mind. And it took me a while to even believe her. I'm what are you talking about? How did you not know? So we'll get into that. But anyway, all this to say, a couple years ago, Mica jumped back into my world. She started DMing me or texting me or something and was like,
no, I joined your coaching group.
oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Why don't you pick it up? Why don't you pick it up from there? How did we get back reacquainted and then let's go from there?
Okay, so I'm going to have you, okay. Also, Pride flag.
Hey.
Okay, so 2020, I decided after ministry school, there was these 3 years where I just wasn't doing anything. And then I remember the only content that made sense to me or I felt like God on it were your posts, the Mic Board posts. I felt like there was something there all the time. So in 2020, I decided to pursue your mentorship group. What are they?
Yeah, mentorship group.
Yeah, and it was specifically spirit coaching / life coaching. So then I was seeing Mike once a week, every week in 2020. And then at the end of the year, I decided to move up to Reading. I wouldn't have said it back then. I wasn't as honest, but it was to be part of your world, to be a part of your ministry and what you were doing, the community. And I saw that because every week I just saw people I wanted to actually live with and stuff like that. But this feels important. In 2020, it was the first year of my life in the beginning of 2020 when I started acknowledging that I had thoughts about other girls, and that's all I would say. That's all I would name it. I never called myself gay. I always just treated it I have these bad thoughts, and that's all that they are. And that's all that they ever were. I never had any experiences with girls. I reached out to a pastor at Bethel, and I basically had low-key conversion therapy to get rid of that thing. And at the end of 2020, I had a session that made me feel like I was maybe healed from that. Anyway, so then.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, great. That's a great intro. Thanks. Yeah. So then Mica shows up to my world. She ends up moving into one of the houses that was still part of that community that I was overseeing, right? So she's living in this house that's with 9 other girls?
9 other girls.
There's 9 other girls.
It's 10 total.
In a 5-bedroom house or something? So she just got thrown in there.
My dream. Just kidding. I didn't like anyone, but great time.
So, and then from there, she pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, can we go for a walk and talk?" I was like, "Yeah." So we went for a walk, and she was like, "I want to be part of your world. Like, how do I just get more involved or plug in or whatever?" And I was like, and I was in the middle of my coming out process when she asked me this, right? So I was like, okay.
Like, where were you at that point?
I had come out to a few people. I was doing deep dives into queer affirming theology. I was pretty sure like my whole life's going to change. I'm moving this direction. I mean, I was already there at that point, but I wasn't publicly out. So someone like you at the ring that you were in my life, I wasn't telling people you that far out yet. Right. But I believe that you were actually like interested, and I believe that you were going to be involved. I was convinced you came back to Reading because you were queer and because what was happening in my life. I told several people before you move, like, you guys, Mica's going to move here, and it's because she's coming out. I told them that, and she doesn't. I don't know if she knows. I think she probably does. I would assume. I swear, you could ask. I could list names right now of people you could ask, and we talked about it. I was just convinced. So I was just kind of preparing. I was like, so just be aware, just be prepared. She might need support, they're like, really, you sure? And some people didn't believe me, and I was like, I think, and some people were like, yeah, for sure, I get it. So anyway, when we went for a walk, I did this with Mica. I had never done this with anybody up to this point, and I still haven't since. But I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you something right off the bat, and then I'll tell you how we got here. Because usually I would tell people my story and leading up to coming out. I was like, I'm going to tell you right up front what I want to tell you, and then I'll give you the backstory. I've never done this before, but it's going to feel like a punch in the face. So I'm gay. I told her that right out the gate, right? No disclaimers or like leading up to it. She just kind of glazed over.
No, this is what happened. He's like, by the way, I've never done this before. This is going to hit you like in the jaw. And he like puts his arms out. We're walking the forest. He's like, I'm gay. And I just keep walking.
I don't remember this. My show choir hands came out?
Yeah, you're like, I'm gay. And I was like, okay. And I just kept walking.
Yeah, she was just like, okay.
Because I didn't want to make it a big deal. Like, I think my theology back then was like, you don't treat them differently. So what I do, I just didn't treat him like a human.
Don't react.
Yeah, don't even respond.
Don't show fear.
Yeah, don't show anything. So I just kept walking, and I was like, okay. I was like holding my shit together. Yeah.
And so then I told her my story and how I got there, and she just was very quiet. Her eyes were large. She was just like kind of taking it in. I could tell it was like a little overwhelming, and by the end of it, I was like, that was probably too much information. So I was like, yeah, so there's that.
And then we like hiked. It was like,
yeah, we were like trudging through. Yeah. So it's like, give it a think, process through that. I just want you to know up front, if you are to get involved in my world, which I'm good with, like I'm happy for you to like jump in on stuff. Like you need to know that's going on, and that we are absolutely like going down this road. I'm not turning back from this. It's going to deeply impact my work and whatever. So that's like kind of where Mica showed up. And do you want to share like your thoughts?
Give me the mic now. Okay, so I think the last thing I say to you is like, I still love you. Like, this doesn't bother me, blah, 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 blah. And I go home and I hug all my roommates. All of a sudden,
why?
I felt so off. I still don't know what it was. I just felt maybe sad. And I felt very heavy. And
like grief?
I don't know exactly what it was, but it felt like so intense. I felt like there was a burden on me. Ew, I didn't hate that language. But so I, for the next 2 weeks, I did not sleep. I was super angry and upset and confused. If you know me, I don't hold anger well. I rarely am angry. And I would go on these walks and talk to God and just be like, why am I here? And spoiler alert, I'm gay now. But at that time, I was like, I wasn't even mad at Mike. I was just, at that time, kind of upset.
Because you had just, like, been healed.
Yes, but I wouldn't even connect. I didn't even know what was going on. I just remember feeling so angry. And I'm going on these walks with God. I don't even reach out to Mike again. I don't follow up with him about that conversation. And I'm mad because I had this idea of like kind of climbing up the ministry ladder and was hoping that Mike would help me like be connected because I was passionate about ministry.
Meanwhile, I'm about to jump off the ladder.
Yes, literally. And after 2 weeks of like wrestling and not sleeping, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm sharing a room with 2 other girls. We're in the master bedroom. So I go into our walk-in closet, which I feels like kind of symbolic, but it's the only place I could go to. And I go into the closet. It's 5:30 a.m. I'm crying to God, and I'm like, why am I so angry? Can you just like take whatever like resistance and pain I feel in my chest, which is probably I would name anxiety now, but at the time I just thought it was a spirit just ruining my life. And all of a sudden in that moment, I get asked this question that I would say is God's voice in my life, or how I particularly knew or understood like God to sound like in my life. And it just said, what if it's my kindness that I led you here? And that's all it said. But what it was alluding to was like, what if it was my kindness that I led you here so that you don't have to go through like 20 years in the closet, the way like 30, however long, and climb the ministry ladder and like realize you're gay because you have known your whole life. You have calculated.
Is this the voice still talking?
Oh, this is me now, basically. Well, in that moment, I know that this is what it meant. Like the question was like, what if this is my kindness?
And then that just kind of
But
came.
all of that was like a download into like my heart.
Wow.
And I remember, like, I mean, I'm kind of jumping out of my story now, but I think I constantly calculated, can I pursue the gay thing subconsciously within the Bethel life, or like my spirituality, which happened to be very charismatic and, you know, evangelical. And I always calculated it to not be worth it. And here you were saying, I've calculated it and I'm still gonna go for it. And I think that's what, anyways, I'm jumping ahead.
Interesting.
But anyways, in the closet, I get asked in my mind, what if it was my kindness? And that, and yes, I think I also felt the anger because I spent like all this money meeting with the pastor like multiple times a month all throughout 2020 to get rid of this thing. And then plot twist, I moved my whole life to meet up with this guy to find out he's gay when I spent the whole year of 2020 getting rid of it. So yeah, that was super upsetting. But in that moment, aside from the question, what if it was my kindness, all of a sudden 7 or 8 memories I had never thought about in years popped up in my mind. The first one was like the first prophetic word I ever got was that I was called to the queer community, that they saw a rainbow over me and I would redeem the rainbow and redeem what God's love is for the queer community. And at that time, 1, I didn't associate being gay, and 2, I had no gay friends. But I think that helped me like be more empathetic towards queer people. And then all these other memories, like, oh my gosh, you had all these intense feelings and thoughts about this person in your life, and you talked to this pastor about it, and you also got a sozo, like, and I didn't remember them at all. And so through our journey,
You had blacked those memories out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I had never remembered them. I was like, oh my gosh, those are there. And there's all these other memories we don't have to get into. But yeah, okay, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, great. Wild. So crazy journey. I didn't know any of that at the time, right? I didn't know that was your backstory because you hadn't told anybody really.
Oh, right. And also, I would say this. I basically took that moment after the closet, was like, I need to look at this thing. And it was an invitation from God. So Mike, his story like profoundly impacted me. It was like, for me, I think it was a catalyst. I feel passionate about his story specifically because I think eventually I would have come out like years later in my life. But there was something about hearing his story that catalyzed it. I was like the first bully to myself, right, in that process. And later on in our story, we would call that part of me, that queer part of me, like a zombie, because like she was like this dead girl that I kept murdering over. I know that language is intense, but it feels appropriate because it's what I had to do to survive. I continually like murdered this part of myself, but that thing is resilient and like can come back and whatever. And so she haunted me constantly. Anyways, after hanging out with him, I stopped being his friend and I met up with leaders from the change movement because I needed, did you know that?
You probably told me this detail somewhere. I didn't.
I met up with, I can name some names.
Don't, we were good. We get it.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. Go ahead.
And I told them what you told me. I didn't say your name. I just said there's like this person who like.
I'm trying to remember in the timeline if I had already told both of them myself.
You probably did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you did. Okay. And I just remember thinking they might be empathetic or like.
Right?
I just thought that the way I experienced Mike, you know, human, makes mistakes, but has always like in your stories when it came to encountering God, always to me were like full of integrity and like honesty, skepticism, which is why I think a lot of people are drawn to him. And I thought that they would be on board because I believed Mike when he told me. I believed that God affirmed his identity. I didn't believe it for myself, but I believed it for him. And there was this thing that I was like, I think it's true. Anyways, so I stopped being his friend. And I was like, can't have a leader in my life if they're like being led by the devil. You know what I mean? So
oh my God.
There was that.
And I remember there being a dip and a gap, and I think I probably texted her after a while, like, hey, how's it going? Just want to check in, or, you know, and you were kind of aloof, or like, yeah, I was giving you your space and also kind of going through my own process. So anyway, I decide I'm going to move to Nashville. I'm going to leave Reading. I have to get out of here because my coming out process, I needed space from the Bethel world and just the opposition in my environment and people just not knowing how to care for queer people. It was awful. And I was like, I need space. So I moved, and several people close to me came with me, right? We left. And somewhere in that process, Mica was kind of toying with the idea of coming with us. And she was still, but you also, okay, so you like stepped away, you're talking to them, but then at some point you started talking to me again.
Yeah.
We'd go on these walks and you'd like
Yeah.
kind of ask more questions. And I eventually got mad at Mica. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I like kind of, I don't know if rebuke is the right word, it's a biblical term, but I kind of like pushed back. I was like, hey, if you're going to talk to me about this stuff, you can't, like, this is not appropriate.
Yeah, because I was just asking questions. So at some point, I was like, I gotta search this out. So I went on this whole thing, like, I gotta look. Like, 1 week, I spent all my time, 40 hours, looking at both side B and, like, affirming. And, like, my brain wanted to, like, split in half. And then at some point, I was like, I can see why queer. I mean, there's this whole other part of me where I realized, like, I understand why queer people want to, like, hurt themselves to the point of not being alive. And then I ended up going to therapy, and then that's when I reignited my conversations with him. And we would talk all the time. I would ask him all these questions of how he got to being affirming. And I just was pretty disrespectful and not humanizing, right?
Well, just like, yeah, you just kept talking about this gay thing like it's other people, like you have no involvement or connection to any of it. Like,
Oh, it probably wasn't until the third walk that I finally told him about myself.
and I was like over here like trying to be supportive and available and like share from my journey and what I was learning freshly in my life. And she was treating me like I'm this crazy person in the street running around naked and like dust is coming off me. And she's like, oh, why are you doing that? What's that about? And I'm like, I am not alone out here. You know, it's kind of, so eventually I was just like, hey, if we're going to be talking about this, like I need some like honesty and integrity from you. I need some buy-in. Like, I'm not just going to strip naked for you to assess me. Like, you need to like treat this with the level of respect and whatever else. I forget the words I use, but I just like started having very clear boundaries with people around me because I was being repeatedly dehumanized by people I was talking to about this. And so when Mica was treating it like some kind of distant theoretical idea that she was like toying with, I'm like, no, my life is not something for you to toy with. Like you need to show up or I'm not gonna be having these conversations with you.
But I would also say, and this isn't unique to myself, but it's very part of me, is that I was the most intense person to myself, right? Like I was the greatest, which that seems to be the way for all queer people, but I was the greatest oppressor to myself. So I oppressed him, and I like really, really oppressed me.
Yeah, her oppression was getting on me, and I was like, no, I'm done with this. That's not going to be happening in my life anymore. Yeah, so that was kind of rough. We got to work that out. Yeah. And she was kind of like, what? Like, didn't really get it.
Oh, yeah, I brought up, like, how I'm the oppressor because I just didn't understand what he was talking about. I didn't understand why it was so painful because I had so removed that queer part of me so far away that I no longer felt pain there. Like, just burned it all off the pain,
right.
You know, whatever.
Yeah, it was so, yeah. You were, like, so detached.
Yes.
And, like, cold about this. And I was like, I'm bleeding out here. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so where do we go from there? What happened after that?
Okay, so you were moving to Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give a little timeline. I moved to Reading at the end of 2020 in November. We moved to Nashville 2021 at the next year. So, like, there was a lot going on in my life. And
quick turnaround.
Yeah, quick turnaround. I was, like, figuring out if I was queer or not. It was crazy. I was going to therapy. Like, I was crying every single freaking day. Every day. I didn't know if I could trust this guy. I barely knew him. I mean, we've known each other since 2014, but, like, with the evangelical kind of indoctrination, I'm like, is this guy's being led by the enemy? I can't, like, what am I doing? I'm going to follow him to
Remember the
Nashville?
enemy?
I know.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that in a while. Nice. We left, and then you were like, I may or may not come with you guys. And I was like, what are you doing? You were just so like wishy-washy on the fence about coming or not. And I'm also like, are you coming out? Like, do you want to, remember like those, I constantly was like pushing, like, what is going on here? And you were like, I don't know. Right?
I mean, being gay was like the most terrifying thing. I mean, I wish there was a better word than terrifying. Like, just you're literally gonna die, you know?
I was trying to like help Mica or push Mica in any direction. Like, don't move to Nashville if you're not clear about what's happening in your life. You know what I mean? Like, I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. If you're not on board, don't relocate your life. Like, don't bet on, like you need some ownership and like conviction for yourself if you're going to make this kind of a move and a choice. Because we were going to relocate to the South. You know what I mean? Like, this was a huge migration for us. None of us had ever lived in the South.
Did you even know you were moving to the South? Did you even understand what that meant?
I had like a rough idea, but because of Stan and the people, you know,
Okay,
I had like there's like a pocket of insulation from Southern culture or whatever. But
Yeah, what I want to say about my unique position is that I moved to Reading kind of late, and at that time, like, I was like starting my life over. And what I want to talk about is like, you know, you had like a pretty big community out there who like kind of, I would say they turned their back on you, decided to go their own ways. And I was shocked that I was the only queer person. I just felt like out of everyone who went, like I was the only one. I was confused. I would ask him all the time, like, why aren't more people on board with this? I was confused. I was like, had this weird mindset around popularity and numbers, and like that's the evidence that means something is good.
oh
or
yeah,
right.
that was compelling. That was compelling too. That like maybe this isn't right because there aren't a ton of people who are saying yes.
Yes. But then your response was like, remember when Bill Johnson started his church? Like half the church left. Like, and there was so much faith in like back then. It was, I mean, we still have faith, but there was something on it, I would say, about there was like adventure and faith and goodness. And when I got alone by myself with God, it always pointed to like Nashville in some ways. But I didn't trust God. I didn't trust anything. I didn't trust anything inside myself. So it was a very turbulent, ambivalent time in my life. I mean, no, I wouldn't recommend anyone to have been in my body at that time because I was terrible at making decisions. I let anxiety ruin my life. I couldn't make a decision about Nashville, which just like tore some relationships. I had to have some hard conversations. It was awful, which is fine. I have a lot of compassion for Mica of 2021. But yeah, with my unique seat, you know, of just being like the only, I mean, at the time, I was like, I'm the only other person who's queer. Like, this is so weird.
Everyone else that came was straight, right? There's
Yeah.
like learning how to be allies and like just doing their own work of figuring out what's even going on and what they believed. So yeah,
Right.
you were in a very unique position in that.
And from the way that I treated my queerness, like killing it over and over and over again. Like I had such negativity, such hopelessness, such trauma there that I saw moving to Nashville as if I go there, I'll 100% be gay. Even, as if I wasn't already gay. Which, like, it's so funny telling these stories.
Right.
But so that's why I had so much resistance toward that. We both came from the same world. We both did school, which at the time that felt kind of niche, like Bethel and, you know, the prophetic world and kingdom minded. And literally at my school for my second year, it was the first time they ever did it, but for like one whole week they taught about homosexuality, which I don't know if they ever did that in any other times, but it was so unique to my experience. And being able to know Mike and see him from 2014 to where he was in 2021 and watch him, like, this guy had a ton of favor. And, like, what I knew about him had a ton of integrity. If you ever listen to his stories about how he encountered God, you could hear his honesty and his skepticism about, like, is that allowed to happen? Like, I don't think that's true. Like, he was just honest. Whereas a lot of people in that environment were like, just trust God, just do these things. And it's not that you weren't saying that, but you were so relatable in the experience where you would constantly be like, you were just so human about it. I think that's what I've always loved about you. From my vantage point, my getting asked to speak all over the world, ordained, changed a lot of my friends' lives, changed my life. Like me, I didn't have a platform in any way, loved the culture, I loved the environment, loved being a part of the church, and I wanted to do ministry. But all I knew is like that part of me, that queerness, could never, ever come out. Like it was suicide. Literally that 1 week where we taught about homosexuality from a non-affirming lens, like in my whole life, just continually saying like, this is so, so wrong. Like not just wrong, but like perverted and like worse than a murderer or like the same level too. And that's how I viewed myself. The language they would use at our church was like, we can't let people be gay because one step away from that is like, they're going to start making it legal for people to be in relationship with kids. Like, they would always do that from the pulpit. And so I held a knife to my queerness. It could never move forward in my being. When I did a whole year's work, 2020, getting set free from this queerness, and I meet Mike, And he's like, actually, God affirms this. It's like he had took years and years, decades of me calculating that I would continue to invest in not living my real life. And this guy was like, I'm going to do it anyways. And it was shocking. I continued to see him walk day by day in 2021 towards what felt like the cross, honestly, before, like, I know I'm getting so biblical, but it did. It just was like, I don't see anything other than like death on the other side of this. And him like being my friend and like letting me into the process. I think that's also a unique thing about my story is like, I wasn't in his world. And all of a sudden I was coming in, just moved there, kind of fighting him, pushing up against him. And he continually made space for me, invited me to things, invited me to dinners where he would talk about his process. While a community of people who I like allowed talk about him in front of me, like that was happening in front of me, and like he continued to make space for me, and I didn't know how to advocate for him even back then. And I was a random person, and he invited me to Nashville. Like all these things, it was just shocking. So I think about my vantage point is like I only experienced generosity in my experience with him, despite his continual pushback, stones being thrown at him without people even knowing there were stones or arrows. And he continued to make space. And so I think that's something that I wanted to share on this podcast that people don't see. And as a queer person, he continued. Basically, the question in my closet was like, what if I don't have to do 20 years of this? But like, what about him? Like, who did that for him? Like, no one did that for him. And yet I'm here. And I think that's what's so cool and special and something I want to make known as a queer person. Like, he didn't just like save my like life or like help me come into my fullness. Like he accelerated my process. I got years taken away from me, but he probably gave me more years if I did this on my own. So my vantage point is like, I saw the kingdom and I saw what he had access to and I wanted it. I was disappointed that he couldn't give me access to that kingdom. And now we're in a new land. This is gonna get poetic, but we're in a new land where we get to build our own kingdom that's way more abundant, way more beautiful, way more like, it's just incredible. I only feel abundance as a queer person, aside from my grief and all the things I experienced.
Trauma notwithstanding.
Yeah. I find myself very lucky as a queer person. More queer people I meet did not have the kind of advocacy that I had with him. He like got in between me and myself, you know, and they don't have that. You know, he also has a bunch of skills with coaching and like just being intelligent and all these things. But I was just like a random person in his like I wasn't close to you, and all the people who moved here, like he knew for like 6 or 5 years, and I was just, and we had known each other for a long time, but the intimacy wasn't really there. He processed a lot about the example of like he had access to all these doors being in ministry and what he had, and you know, coming out. It was an active, I'm giving these keys away because, well, it's not even I'm giving these keys away. It's like these people were going to change the locks so he couldn't get in. And I just like saw him humbly like go into that space and give up so many things that people don't see. I think I'm constantly upset because there are things that like, you don't even have to put this in this, but he is constantly, there's so much stuff you could say about all like so many people, and like he never goes that route. Anyways, what am I saying?
Well, I don't know what you're saying.
I just have only experienced integrity, and I'm shocked because I haven't experienced the same amount of influence that he does. But what I went through was like tore me apart, and like yet this guy continues to show up every single day. So anyways, I'm very thankful. I'm in a seat of constant abundance based off the way that he's lived, and so very thankful over here. I've loved this seat. It's cost me for sure, but he's also made a way for me. So yeah.
Wow. My goodness. Thank you. You made me cry there for a little bit. Hi. Quick little commercial break. Over here in my world, there was a phrase that came up out of my work and my writing that felt like it encapsulated exactly what I was trying to say to my evangelical background as a queer person, and it was that I matter more than your theology. So we made a sticker so people in the world could have this phrase in their life too, specifically queer people, right? But we also made an ally sticker. You matter more than my theology. So we're selling these stickers, and 100% of the proceeds go to funding either coaching or mentorship groups or facilitated conversations with queer people who are particularly recovering from religious trauma and evangelical backgrounds. So if you want to buy one of these stickers, you're helping us do that, provide either discounts or full-on scholarships for queer people to get access to our services, because sometimes finances are a barrier and I still need to be able to pay my team. So this helps us find a way around that. And then also people were requesting a shirt. Guess what? We made a shirt! Look at this shirt, you matter more than my theology. So these shirts are just now available if you want to go check those out. The link in my bio, those are linked below this episode as well to find those. Fund our work, we appreciate it. Okay, so that student housing situation that you were living in, I started coming out. People started outing me, right? It wasn't contained, it just got messy, which I expected that probably would happen. I hoped that it wouldn't, but it did. And you had an interesting seat in how some of that played out. Would you mind sharing some of those stories? Like, this is basically just shit talking, but I'm curious because I talk about how painful this was and whatever. I don't get into the details, but you had a front row seat to that stuff. You were living with some of what was going on here.
Yeah.
What were some things you saw? How was that for you? Especially as someone who was still like trying to figure out if you were going to come out of the closet yourself, right?
Yeah, totally. You told me, I think thankfully you told me before anyone outed you to me, which I feel very thankful for in my process. So I lived in a house with 9 girls. And unfortunately and sadly and like disrespectfully, like it was gross. And yeah, Mike got outed. And one by one, kind of people would talk to me about him. And I'll just share a unique experience where one, specifically a housemate of mine, told me they didn't want to live in the house anymore. They were like picking up their stuff and leaving. It was like very quick and abrupt and immediate. And I asked them why. So I got like lunch with them and I was like, why are you gonna leave? Regardless if, Mike is kind of leading this community, like you have such a great time with our house and there's like 9 of us and that's enough to like have a community. I also shared a room with this person and this person goes, well, I don't want to be able to like live in a house where my roommate could be gay. And I was, plot twist, spoiler alert.
You've been living with me for months.
Literally. And that was me. And I think, I have had to do some real like work when it's come to that season of my life because I basically saw all these people talk about Mike, not knowing they were talking about myself as well. Unfiltered, disrespectful. Obviously, some people were just like working through it, but that was still painful because that was his humanity and my humanity by osmosis, like by default. It was super sad. It makes me sad in the ways that I didn't stick up for myself or stick up for him. And it wasn't just like 10 people, it was like dozens of people working it out. And I think that goes to show like how cancerous the hate of non-affirming theology is. So anyways, that was kind of a shock.
That was super fun for me. I loved hearing about who was doing, saying what, and who was moving out, and it was a circus.
It was also like you against everyone because the people who were your allies didn't even know how to like protect you as well because we were like all learning. And so that was painful.
Yeah.
And
that was a very painful time.
yeah.
I don't miss that. Okay, so let's move on from all the pain and the drama, or I guess just the pain. Moved to Nashville. You decided to move.
Yeah.
Do you remember like what the deciding factor was? Why did you decide to do that?
I don't actually know why I moved. I think it was just ultimately like every time I got alone with God, listened to worship, it was pointing to Nashville.
Wow.
And people I talked, I also had best friends who moved here, and I was like, I guess if it doesn't work out, I can go hang out with them.
Nice.
So that was kind of my thing. And I told myself like I can always move back in like 3 months and like stuff like that. I had crazy amount of anxiety though. It was a terrible, turbulent time. Because I was supposed to live with someone here in Nashville who ended up not being affirming, and that was super painful because I decided not to live with them, and there's that. That was a huge...
I forgot about that.
And I had to like actually advocate for myself. I think what's unique to me too is like I was historically very passive and like allowed myself to be very small, and like all of a sudden my queerness like gave me the gift of actually learning to fight for myself.
It removed the permission to be passive and enable toxic behavior anymore around that aspect of your identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I was having conversations I've never had in my life, which, if you're not doing something for the 28 years, it's terrifying. So
It's a lot all at once. Yeah.
anyways, I decided to move. I was also like dating someone who was like moving to Nashville, but that's
A girl.
a girl. I know. I'm so thankful for Mike. I like got to fall in love.
It's so annoying. Like, she's gotten to have so many queer experiences that I haven't had yet. I'm like, yay! I'm so happy for you.
I'm so thankful.
Ew.
I get to touch just like attraction, and it's so gorgeous and fun.
Yeah, that's okay. So that happened. Yeah, we worked through it. We thankfully had each
right.
other, and we like processed a lot. We ended up deconstructing in that process as well. And then at some point, you decided you're gonna come out.
Oh my
You
gosh.
wanna talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. Ew, coming out. So Mike came out, and at his coming out party, it unlocked something in me that I had never experienced in my queer journey. I was bawling the entire time watching him come out. I mean, I was crying literally, I'm not exaggerating, I was crying every single day of my life. And there's something so beautiful about coming out, and I think I was like, I want that. And so I was kind of processing, do I want to come out? What does that mean? What does coming out mean to me? Why do we do what we do? And so I decided I'm going to come out September 16th, which is my birthday. And then a couple weeks before or 2 weeks before, I decided not to, because I remember telling Mike, we were processing, I was like, what about that person I went to high school with 10 years ago? What are they going to think about?
They're going to see this.
Yes, like, what are they going to think about? Oh, and I mean on social media, because at that point I had come out to everyone that like mattered to me in my small group. And so I was like nervous, all these rampant, insane, anxious thoughts like just flood your mind as like a queer person, because I think that's just the chaos that you have to go through.
I mean, it's social suicide, right? It's like joining mathletes. It's
And you've already created such an intense relationship with suppressing yourself that like actually going through the thorns of that is painful. I decided not to come out, but I was upset. My birthday was going to be kind of lame because I was going to receive texts from people who like had decided they couldn't support me being gay, and I knew they would still text me anyways because like they were nice and I hated it all. Anyways, so I asked Mike if he wanted to come skydiving with me. I decided I was gonna go skydiving because I knew I needed to do something that was like extravagant to get me away from the pain of my birthday. And we went with a couple of our friends, and while on the plane up, and if you've never been skydiving, depending on your plane, there's no door. So you're just like in this tiny tin can of a plane that's like held together by rubber ducks.
Staples? What?
Duct tape is the word I'm looking for.
Rubber ducks.
And I just had this moment with God. Like, it takes 25 minutes to get to the altitude, yeah. And you can't hear anything. It's so loud. And I just had a moment with God. And all I could think, the way I can best describe it is I felt like God was like, you know, like, there's gonna be something about coming out. I think you should come out. It's essentially this like thing.
God's like, I think you should come out.
Yeah, and I remember kind of suppressing it, and it felt like a searing, like a burn. Like saying no to that voice was so painful. Being up in the air doing something terrifying gave me contrast to recognize I wasn't terrified of skydiving. What was the most terrifying thing I could do that day was coming out. That thing made me feel alive. Versus this thing that I paid $400 for wasn't giving me life. I knew the thing that would give me life that day and like would actually fill me up was coming out. And so I think the contrast of like literally falling to my death is what I needed to recognize. Obviously, I was very safe. Helped me recognize like that's actually what would be valuable to me. So anyways, I also told Mike okay, I think I want to come out today after skydiving. I need to process all the terrifying, stupid, like judgmental thoughts I have about myself. And so for the next 2 to 3 hours, we like workshop all those thoughts. There's something I was going to say and I'm forgetting about coming out. Oh, I said I wanted to come out for other people, like to build a better future. Like that's why I'm coming out. And I remember he was like, I think that's a nice sentiment, but I don't think you should do it for other people. You should do it for yourself. Like you should do it for little Mica, like for all the ways you couldn't advocate for her and all these things. And I think that helped me like really ground into why I actually really was coming out. I was like, wasn't doing it for anyone else. I stopped caring about that person from 10 years ago. And I remembered all the ways, like all the time that's been robbed from me. And now every year moving forward, I can be the most whole me. And it's so crazy because I don't think about that stuff anymore. You know, I've been out less than a year, but I don't like think about those intense, jarring things. So it's kind of hard to find right now.
Yeah, totally. Which is nice. Yeah. It's nice to not just be so available to those horrifying thoughts and feelings all the time.
Totally.
That night, you just were like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I basically grabbed your phone and just started taking notes and like interviewing you and grabbing your sentiments and things you wanted to communicate. And we put it into like an Instagram post. We got a picture of you. You posted it. You screamed. I think there were pitches from you I hadn't heard before. And we were just like celebrating, right? Your birthday, but also you're coming out. And it was so much fun. And the comments just started rolling in. And what did it feel like after you published and then people started commenting, or you would just like kind of let go of control, basically? Like, what did that feel like?
Okay, I need to create context. The day before we went skydiving, I didn't sleep at all. So I like stayed up the whole day, the day before my birthday, then all night I didn't sleep at all. Went skydiving, so by the time we reached the nighttime of my birthday, I was so exhausted. I had jumped out of a plane and I was coming out, and you know, don't even think about all the other days I've been crying, you know. So I was exhausted. I was probably like not even there when I actually came out with all my friends. I wasn't even available. And I went to bed, and the next morning, before I even checked my Instagram, Mica, his sister, sent me a text, and it was from Isaiah, when it was like,
Isaiah, the book of the Bible?
yeah, she sent me a verse.
Okay.
And she said, it was like the verse where it's like, God has sent you to heal the brokenhearted. And that whole passage where it's like you were sent to like bring the good news and all that stuff. And in that moment, I felt like this wave of goodness and like sweetness and what I would describe as like God's presence, like this thing, this like whimsical thing. And I looked at all the comments, and I would say that like coming out felt like a baptism, you know, like this thing that was inside me that no one else could see. Like I'm going to make a decision to let them know that I'm a different person, and I'm going to, you know, it just kind of felt like that. And it was the best thing ever. Like I was like high for like 4 or 5 weeks after, queer joy just constantly emanating. Like I felt so myself every single day, like hopeful and excited for the future. So
Yeah.
that's how it felt.
Love that. What's it like being attracted to women? I don't get it.
Oh my gosh. I love attraction, right? It is like the most vibrant, colorful, beautiful, all the things. I don't know. It's just like,
You love being attracted to women.
I love women. They're so sparkly and cute, and I love everything about femininity.
You love their bodies.
I love their voices. I love their bodies. I love how they do things. I love their hair. This is so weird.
Why is that weird? Is it weird?
Yeah, how would
But
you
when you
describe
talk about it, you get so poetic and like
I
you
know, where
take the
is
lid off the
she?
world, and I'm like, oh my god.
Well, let's talk about a unique experience in the beginning of my process where there was this guy I was interested in, and he fit all the boxes. This is before I knew I was like truly gay, but it was also at a time where I was allowing myself to like allow my attraction. So there's this guy that was right in front of me who I knew was a friend, fit all the boxes, like cute, had an accent, Christian, great guy. And then next to him was someone was a girl I was attracted to. And I was like, I don't even know this girl, but I'm feeling like electricity when I see her, and like music starts playing out of nowhere. And I would do anything to like make sure she doesn't have a bad day, like all these things. Like I don't even know her. Like this person was an acquaintance, so it wasn't like a complete stranger. And I would look at him and look at her because they were like near each other. And to him, when I looked at him, he was like a candle. Like there's warmth, there's like light, and you go over to her and it's like fire, like lightning. And it was shocking. Again, the contrast was there to be like, this is different. This is like, she is sparkly and vibrant and emanating. And I would, I felt like a teenager in like those coming of age movies where when they fall in love, like they'll do anything. And like, that's how I felt, which was ridiculous because I didn't even know her. So, yeah, that's how attraction feels like to me. I think I don't need to date every woman in the world, but when they walk into the room, I'm so impressed. Like they are art. They are gorgeous. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. That's awesome. I'm starting to feel a little repressed right now. Just kidding. I kind of want to ask you just in general as we start to like kind of descend and land this plane. You came from Bethel, ministry school, Christian girl, looking to be in the ministry, whatever, right? To being a queer rogue agent, just kind of out in the world now. What are some lessons you've taken away? What's some pieces of advice you'd give to people? What are some expressions or sentiments you want to share about the journey in general? Like I'm kind of giving you a large, like wide swath. What is any of that you'd care to like just kind of express at this point? Like you've been on a journey, you've made some choices, you've cast your lot, you're gay as hell, and you're finally honest about that. How does it feel? What do you want to express as far as like...
Who's my audience here?
The people who are watching who are like intrigued, maybe they're a little queer on the inside and don't know it, don't want to admit it, don't want to look at it. What'd you say to those people?
Oh my gosh, to queer people? I would say this. I am living what's impossible right now, what I thought was impossible. 2014 Mica, who met Mike, where he knew I was gay, told herself, calculated, that this life could never happen, and I'm living it. It's shocking. I think that's the most beautiful part of all of this. I was told that death was on the other side when you make this choice. But what's the most shocking part is like there is more love on this side of things. I am compelled and more responsible on this side of things than I ever was. And it's so worth it to meet this part of you, like to feel whole, to stop being severed, to stop, like, it's just worth it. And I think also the more I like read about trauma, like your body probably won't let you continue to do what you were doing. Like, we weren't made for this. And that's, for my story particularly, like my physical body started shutting down. So, and that's something I hear from a lot of queer people I've talked to. They talk about certain ailments, and I'm not a doctor, I don't know things, but it just seems to be a trend. Something, I'm curious what you would think about this. Something I told myself is like, I could always go back.
Really?
Yeah, I said like, if this doesn't like work out for me, I could always go back, because that's the evangelical gospel. You're able to always return. So I would say try it out, and if it's not working out, go. I don't know if that's good.
I am shocked. Give me this microphone right now. Well, first, I want to say to that, I never thought that. I never once thought, I could always come back.
That's the gospel, is it not? Like, no matter how far you go. Like,
No, well, for me, from my vantage point and process, the gospel was taking me there.
Okay.
I never thought, I could come back. That was never a possibility in my mind. I'm like, why didn't I think that? That was never a possibility for me. Interesting. I also don't think it's a possibility for you, by the way.
I think it could be.
You could go back?
Well, no, I'm just saying if it weren't true.
Oh, like if you went down this road and it was like not real.
Yeah, if it's like
sure.
everything that we think it is, like that you're being led by the devil, that like your life is gonna fall apart, that like you won't be fruitful, that like you'll only spend these are all the judgments I'd had on queer people and myself. And if that were true, that I could always go back.
Yeah.
That was of the basis that like queerness is wrong.
Right.
But on this journey I've learned like the real truth is that this thing is beautiful and good and true. And I think I'm just like, taste and see the goodness of God. That's what I'm saying to queer people. I'm
You're
like,
so biblical today.
taste and see. Like, test me, Test it.
Us coming out feels like coming back to what we left when we joined Christianity, right? We did the Christian thing.
Right.
Try to make it work. Not that I still identify. Do you still identify as Christian?
Yes.
We're still Christians.
I'm more Christian than he is.
Is that true? Probably.
I go to church more.
That's true.
I hang out with people.
You hang out with more Christians than I do. That's true. Touche. But I would say coming out was us coming back to what wasn't working, because the white evangelical gospel wasn't the truth.
Yeah.
Wasn't working for us. Was not abundant life. It was not freedom. And so having to step out of that was returning to our own humanity, which we had from the beginning. Whatever. We're getting like.
Wait, I have more advice.
Okay, great.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. That reminds me why I'm so thankful for this. That was like a moment you just watched where I was like, oh yeah, that's good. Get around queer people. So Mike was like the only person I was around who was queer, and thank God, because again, I was my number one bully, and two, he has like such a great skill in kind of coaching people to get out of spaces that aren't for them. I think if I had not encountered his story, I would probably still be in the closet in some way, shape, or form. I don't think I would have touched it for years. I was someone who had like a Pinterest board. I love like who I was gonna marry, like type of guys.
Like of a dude?
And like my wedding, and like I was trying to date people, and like, ugh. And I remember, the contrast. Again, I'm bringing up that word. I'm just seeing how like not real I was. So, anyways, get around queer people. Old, young, all the things. Stay away from side theology.
Run.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna tell you, just stay away from it. We had to go through that land, but that's not fun. There's no fun rides. It's not a good time. Don't go there.
That park sucks.
It sucks. No, I think that'd be my biggest thing is get around queer people. They're the people you judge the most, probably, if you're in the closet. And
they're the scariest. They're the riskiest people to get around, but they also will unlock things that straight people can't in you if you're queer.
yeah.
That's so real. And it's not a diss or a knock against straight people. It's just you're not straight, right? So if you're queer, you need to get around people who are like you, who have had to like press into levels of self-knowledge and acceptance and social risk to touch some of those places that straight people would never think to and don't need to and are rewarded for not doing, right? Like, this is a weird little thing. I want to put us both on the spot. We're both going on dates tonight.
Holy.
Right?
Yeah.
What's it feel like to be going on a date with a girl that you think is attractive when 2014 Mica didn't even know she was queer?
Oh my God.
So on the spot right now.
I'm so on the
You're
spot.
shocked. How does it feel? Are you excited?
I am really excited. I think this girl is like so bubbly and so cute, and I'm just like telling you all my type. She's just so cute. And for me, this might just be unique to me, but I was robbed of so many years of figuring out this guy too. A lot of years, more years than me. That was not important
Thank you for
information.
that. That's great.
It's like I want to make up for lost time in some ways, and like I kind of go big, and Mike always reminds me to like chill out. Like I want to like do so much for this girl, like get a limo or
She
something.
wants to propose tonight. And I'm like,
Okay.
please don't propose to her.
That is a very lesbian thing to do, anyways. But I don't know. This is also my first date, like kind of in the world. I'm nervous. I'm excited. Having this conversation is reminding me that I get to do this for 2014 Mica. That I get to have fun, that this is available to me now, that I get to actually live and breathe my truth. And at one point, 2014 Mica would have judged that sentence right there. I'm living an abundant life, which is so cool, being queer. I always thought and theorized queer people would only get to touch like the scraps of life because they weren't in tune with like love. And yet I would argue they're the community that's embracing love the most. What about you?
What's the question?
The question
How do I
was
feel
like-
about going on a date tonight?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm not in the same position as Mica. This guy is like, he's attractive. I'm looking forward to connecting with him. I don't think there's a future here, but he's been sweet in like, you know, messaging back and forth. And I'm looking forward to like, this is our first time actually meeting. We've been talking on an app for a few months, just here and there, you know? So we're gonna go see a movie. Like, it's not like this big, it's a different kind of date, but the thing that I am excited about is, one, I love that I get to go on this date. I love that, because I remember Mike 3 years ago was never allowed to go on a date with a dude, and so I like was trying to figure out how to make going on dates with girls work, and I couldn't do it, so I like, yeah, that was a really stressful time. So even as casual and like low stakes as this is, I'm very excited to just get to be that guy. But then I'm also excited to meet this person, you know, and like I'm open and considerate, and who knows? Yeah, so I'm excited.
That's what makes us different. That's why you asked me about the attraction thing, because I'm just like starry-eyed for this person. I don't even like know them. I don't expect a lot. I'm not like in love, but I think it's so fun. Like girls are so cute.
Nice.
And you're like, we're going on a date and we're doing these things. I'm like,
I'm excited about it. I
what's
just,
he
you know,
like?
oh, I don't know what he's
does
like.
he sparkle? No. I want Mike to like live a Heartstopper episode where he just feels like tingly and like little fireworks. If you haven't seen that show, see it. Whether you're straight, you're in the closet, go see it.
Yeah, I love that show. I want that moment. Mica, thanks for sharing your story.
Oh my
Thanks,
gosh.
Thanks for being on my podcast.
Thank you for setting me free.
What does Neo say to that guy in the second Matrix? It's like, I didn't set you free, kid. I showed you the door. You're the one who walked through it. Right? You set yourself free.
That was really sweet.
It's true.
Okay, if you haven't seen his coming out party video,
Is there a video for that?
yeah, I cry at the very, very end. And that's basically what Mike really means to me. So go there.
Your section isn't in that video.
Are you joking?
You wouldn't let me put it out there. I had to cut you out.
At some point,
Literally what you're describing
well-
is not in that video because you asked me to cut it out.
okay, well, we'll do it here. It might not be as emotional.
I'm going to reenact it. Right?
But what did I say?
You started talking about how beautiful women were and how like thankful you were that you got
Basically, I had never touched attraction in my life until I met Mike, which is why we are talking about this thing. Oh, wait, I guess I have had attraction to some people, but I wasn't in tune with what was happening in my body. So sure, I was attracted to girls or whatever, but I would shut it off so quickly, so intensely, cut it like it was like a weed, that I had no relationship with it. Yeah, I think at the end of that video, I was just so thankful to get to touch that. It was so cool. Anyways, I don't repeat myself, but I'm thankful. I'm out. I'm free.
Me too. I'm thankful you're out and free.
Yeah.
Freaking Mike. Oh man. I just want to thank you for just being like an absolute beast and being tenacious when it comes to the research that you've done and just bringing us all in it. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for like fighting for the part of me that I didn't know how to. And yeah, I don't have a lot of words, but I just want to say like you've given me the gift and the permission to explore my sexuality. I remember the first time like 7 months ago that I said out loud like, oh, I like girls. And you gave me the gift and the permission to say that out loud. In my world, I don't think there's anything like more innocent or childlike than just to feel attraction. It's so sweet and kind, and I'd never touched that before. And I can still feel or see the color coming into my life the second I became honest. So I just want to say thank you for what all those people are for you. Thank you for being that for me and fighting for that person, not just giving me permission, but actually fighting for her. I don't think I would have seen her if it weren't for you. I actually killed that girl, and she came back and haunted. She haunted both of us, and I just want to thank you for that. It's a gift. Yeah, I love you so much.
Great. So here's the deal. If you're a queer person recovering from your evangelical background, you need a place, a safe space, and other queer people to process your thoughts, your feelings, your current existing relationships with people who are not affirming in your life. We have a space Mica and I are both a part of called the Rainbow Room. I'd love to invite you to join us there if that's you. If you're not queer, it's not a space for you, and that's okay. If you are someone who knows, loves, is in a relationship with a queer person, and you need support in learning how to be an actual ally for that person, you can always email us. We've got a lot of great resources for you to help support that journey. But thank you guys for listening. Thanks for being here. Very excited about the rest of the episodes. Queer people in the church. We didn't really talk about the church very much in this episode, which is okay. The thing is, we both grew up in church and survived. We made it. So if we can do it, you can do it too. And coming out is so worth it. All you queer kids out there who are still in the closet, we see you, we love you. It's worth it. There's life on the other side. Please come out, at least to yourself.
I'm praying for your husbands, your partners, your non-binary, whatever you want. I'm still praying for them. You know how we used to always get that all the time back in wherever we came from? People were always praying for our partners. Well, I'm praying for your partners. That's what I'm about.
Yeah, that's true. She does pray for us sometimes, and it's like magic. It's awesome. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
So many queer people have been hurt by the church, and they don't know how to move forward. They have so much hurt and anger and pain to process through, to heal from, and the world they left behind is not the solution. My team and I here in Neuda are trying to forge a new path forward for people exactly like that. Here's the challenge. My team and I have bills to pay. We don't want to put the cost of the services and resources we're providing for the queer community on them. These guys are victims of really painful things they should never have had to go through. Here's where you can come in. Some of you, you're not on the front lines. You're not dedicating your life and energy and work toward addressing this, but you care about it and you know it's important. We created what we call the Neuda Partnership Program, where people like you can either do a one-time contribution or a regular subscription to help fund and support the work that my team and I are doing, to either provide discounts or fully scholarship people to jump into either our one-on-one private coaching or our group facilitated conversations. We found these two spaces to be the most impactful and the areas that are most needed for people going through this journey. If you care about and believe in this work and you want to contribute to it, but you don't necessarily have the skills or the experience or the energy to give to this, we are happy to allow you to financially support us while we get in the trenches with people like this and help them move forward into a better future. The link below has either option available for you if you'd like to join us as a newer partner. I hope you consider doing this with us. We need the support. We have so much work to do out here. Thank you for considering joining us.